Hey, welcome back to this week 9. Week 9.
It's all over.
End of the regular season. Inside the Zone Show, Justin Kenny, as always, from Optimum Performance Sports. And we are talking high school football. This week's slate isn't as sexy as Justin Kenny is used to.
Oh, yeah, yes. Week 9, we're just trying to get to the postseason, right? Let's get there.
So pretty much, in the area, we've racked up all the conference championships.
Yeah.
Teams have won at least a share pretty much of everything, if not won it outright. But let's start off with the Northeast 8 this week because our Highlight Zone game of the week is going to be Leo and DeKalb. You're talking about two one-loss teams going up against each other. These are teams that, when they play each other, it's got a little bit of a playoff feel.
Yep.
And also, it's going to be good preparation, I would think, for both of these teams going into the postseason because they both think they can make a run for a sectional championship.
Both want to get some traction in Week 9, and with just one loss on each side, I think it's the biggest game of Week 9 by far, regardless of conference, because Leo, I still feel like just isn't getting the respect that maybe they should. Jackson Barber continues to get better each and every week. And then I think DeKalb, it was that team we kept an eye on earlier in the year and said this team could put it together if these things happen, and the majority of them have. So probably the second and third best teams in the conference facing off on Friday night.
And both of those teams, their only losses to East Noble. And East Noble, if you take a look at the Sagarin rankings, which takes into account difficulty of schedule, we know they had a couple of good wins outside of the conference to start the season off. But as they were mentioning on the draw show yesterday, this is a team in East Noble that may have the firepower at this point to make a run all the way down to Indianapolis. That was one of the topics I think East Noble fans picked up on when they were watching the draw show yesterday.
Sure. I mean, well, maybe, I know East Noble fans would love to be able to beat Bishop Dwenger, and they don't want to feel like they're ducking Bishop Dwenger. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, without Dwenger sitting there in 4A, it clears the road for the North, right? I mean, more often than not, Dwenger's going to be that. Just ask Angola how that goes.
I think I think maybe the toughest is going to be Marion when you take a look at 4A because they had the experience of the long run last year, the athleticism. I mean, they're a pretty solid team that they could see down the road.
Yeah, pretty good, and they had a good part of the early season. They kind of flustered down the stretch, but got a lot of talent. Wayne opening up with them down there in the first week of the playoffs. But I think if you're East Noble, man, you got to feel that not only did a really competitive NE8 prepare you, but also those non-conference games, the Plymouth and the Mishawaka games that prepared you for what you're going to see in 4A. So I like their chances, but man, let's win a sectional first for East Noble, because it's been a minute since they've won a sectional.
When is the last time?
93, 2003, something like that?
I was going to say 2003.
I think it's right. 2003. So, hey, 16 years without a sectional. Win a title first, a sectional title, and then we'll talk more about how it goes in the future.
Also in the Northeast State, you got a couple of other decent matchups this week. New Haven at Huntington North, or Huntington North rather at New Haven. I had forgotten that Huntington North will be in 4A this year.
Yep.
So they dropped down a classification, and obviously New Haven is a 4A school. And then you've got Norwell at Columbia City, which could be a competitive matchup as well. So even though the schedule across the board not that great in terms of the level of competition for each of the teams, the Northeast State actually has some pretty intriguing games this week.
Sure, and I think the team that desperately needs to win the most in the NE8, other than East Noble wants to keep their undefeated season intact. You look at Columbia City. Yeah. I mean, starting 4-0, now they've lost 4 straight. You don't want to go into the playoffs with a 5-game losing streak. It's a winnable game against Norwell. Norwell's very good. I've been very impressed with what
their
Norwell's
defense
been able to do.
Is tight.
Yeah, holding DeKalb scoreless in the first half a couple weeks ago, only losing that game 13-9 was impressive. But Columbia City just needs to find some positivity. They need a W going into the postseason. We'll see if they can do it against Norwell.
Yeah, and Columbia City faces DeKalb at DeKalb, I believe.
Right, yeah.
In the first week of the postseason. You don't want to go in there with your heads down because that could be a long night for you in Waterloo.
Could be. You need some momentum going into the postseason because you didn't get any favors with the draw.
Let's talk about the SAC now. Homestead clinched its first ever SAC championship this past week with a rainy win against Wayne, 24-0 at Walter Stadium. What's your takeaway for Homestead heading forward? Because obviously they're jacked to win the SAC title, but you take a look at it now with having a bye in 6A. They faced Wayne last week, who was winless. They face a Southside team this week whose only win is against Wayne.
Yeah.
And then they have a bye. This is a team, as we were talking about with the Northeast State, that teams are ramping up and getting ready for the postseason.
Right.
This is a team where you look at and you say, man, there's 3 weeks where they're not playing a game or not playing a team that has a lot of W's.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's what Chad Zolman has to guard against, because complacency could set in. Then you go to Noblesville to start the playoffs,
Yeah.
a one-win team, but they play in the Hoosier Crossroads, which is probably the third toughest conference in the state outside of the Metropolitan and the SAC. So Noblesville, I don't think is a typical one-loss team in terms of their quality. So I think you have to guard against that complacency setting in. Now you have Ryan Burton at running back to replace Braden Hardwick, and he had a great first week of the year at the position last Friday. So doesn't seem like they're missing a beat there. But I think it's still refine those things as you go into week 9 because you're going to have a 2-week break to get healthy before you play in the playoffs.
When you take a look at Bishop Dwenger at Northrop, Dwenger is in a different situation that they haven't had to deal with before in the fact that they're going to have a bye in the postseason because they're bumped up to 5A, and 6A and 5A will not be playing in the first week. What do you do and how do you approach this week if you're Bishop Dwenger? Northrop is a team we've seen capable of maybe coming up and beating a good team, but they haven't been as consistent, I think, as Jason Dorfler would have liked this year. One
of the scores that surprised all of us last week was Northrop going down at Northside. And maybe not the win, but the lopsided score. I mean, Northrop up 10-0 at halftime, give up 29 unanswered to lose 29-10. Can they bounce back against Bishop Dwenger? I'm not sure. I think Dwenger is just that business-like demeanor that they always are. Last week beating Snyder in the way they did, So it's just ho-hum. We talk about, points for being really impressive. You don't give very many to Bishop Dwenger, but by gosh, they win. It's just kind of the thing we've talked about for years with Bishop Dwenger. It's like nothing really overly exciting about Bishop Dwenger. They just take care of biz.
They run their system well. They execute it. They don't shoot themselves in the foot, and they win football games.
Yeah, in the end. It's like when you're looking for analysis, you're like, what do you say other than that's it?
They do their thing. Well, they will face Northside in the first round of the playoffs. And Northside's an interesting team because not quite sure what we're going to get every single Friday night. Part of that is because of injuries. But also, this is a team that had pretty high expectations at the beginning of the season. And sometimes on a Friday night, you see it. You get it.
Yeah.
They're going to face Dwenger in the first round of the postseason, but they face Concordia this week. Concordia has got McConaughey in the first round of the playoffs. I think McConaughey 6-2.
6-2, and has rushed for over 3,000 yards in the year. It's not an easy trip.
Yeah, and they're going to have to travel to their place, so they need to get right for this. Northside wants to get right, gain some confidence going into the Dwenger game. How do you see this game playing out? Because I think we were talking about it before we went on camera. This was probably the best matchup in the SAC this week as far as level of competition.
Probably. You look at Northside, and we knew, the top 4 was going to be Homestead, Dwenger, Snyder, Carroll, right? Top 4. And then who was that 5th team? And we talked Northrop. We talked, Concordia. It could be Northside.
Yeah.
Because if they win this week, they're 5-4. They're 4-0 with Deuce Taylor at quarterback. Now, the 4 games he missed were the 4 losses to those aforementioned 4 teams.
And their schedule was pretty rough early on.
Yeah, started with 3 straight shutouts, to Snyder, Dwenger, and Carroll, I believe. So it was a rough first half of the year. But they bounced back. Deuce Taylor is now as close to 100% as he's been all season long. And so you're looking at a winnable game at Zollner, and they could be 5-4 going into the playoffs and hosting a team that they hung around with for a quarter when Bishop Dwenger opened Shields Field in week 2, and that was without Deuce Taylor. So not saying Northside is an upset pick whatsoever. I think that's just a more intriguing game than people are giving it credit for. But we'll see if Northside can go over 500 this week and take it into the playoffs. But I think Concordia just as much needs some momentum heading into that, I think, sneaky, difficult game at McConaughey.
I agree. Let's talk about the ACAC because South Adams clinched at least a share of the ACAC title with a 15-zip win against Woodland. First time since 1993 that the Starfires are bringing home a conference championship. They've got Southern Wells this week. But I want to ask you, what do you take away from last week? Because we were all stunned when we saw 0-0.
Yeah, right?
I know the weather played a factor, but I'm not going to discount anything that Sherwood Haydock did defensively because you could be playing in a monsoon, and to put up a 0 defensively against South Adams in the first half, I was impressed.
Yeah, and you're playing on turf at Woodland, so you're not playing in the muck. Christian Somerset for South Adams set that single-game rushing record. I think he had 266 yards on the ground for South Adams. They were able to move the ball almost 400 yards of total offense, but give credit to Woodland for being able to keep them off the scoreboard into the second half. So 15-0, I think, is exactly what Grant Mosier wanted late in the year. He needs a refocus type game because you're winning by 40 every week. Everybody's singing your praises. The guys start kind of taking it easy a little bit, right? It's natural, particularly with teenagers. This will get them to refocus. They take care of business against South Adams, win this title outright, and focus on what they hope will be a long run into the tournament.
To me, that's a big. I know it's a loss, but it's a decent confidence builder for Woodland because you look at their record; they're 3-5. Granted, they played Lima Central Catholic. They played some difficult games out of conference, but they're facing an Adams Central team at Adams Central this week. Adams Central will go in as a favorite. Let's say Adams Central wins that. Homestead or Woodland is 3-6 then going into the postseason, but they would be hosting Eastside in the postseason. That could be an upset special because I don't think Woodland is as bad as you would think a 3-6 team might be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that whole sectional is really interesting because you have Eastside in there, and you have Woodland in there, and you have DeWanger or Lures in there. You have a Bluffton in there, I want to say, too, in that sectional.
I didn't write down the entire thing, but Fairfield, Bluffton, that seems right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a sectional that could be won by 4 or 5 different teams. I think we only have a couple of those in the area that you could say that about. So Eastside, they're feeling disrespect, I'm sure. They're like, hey, we took care of business in the small school division. Yeah. NACC, we beat down Cherubusco. But I think, are they the favorite with 6 wins? I don't think you could say that, really. Is Bishop Lure the favorite with 2 wins? I don't know. I think it's a wide open sectional.
Well, let's move on to the NECC then, because Eastside hosted Angola team this week that, based on the fact that Angola's 4A, you got guys like Ryan Brent running around making plays, big physical dudes. How big of a game is this for Eastside, knowing, okay, it doesn't matter in the standings. Both teams basically know where they are in the conference standings, big division, small division. But if you're Eastside, you need to get prepared for a Woodland team.
You need to get right and get a win, hopefully for them, on the road or in that first round of the tournament. And then you look conversely to Angola, that's won 4 straight games. They're trying to get to 5-4. They play Leo to open the postseason, which I think is very familiar with. And all of a sudden, a team that we counted out the first half of the year with Angola and said, man, they're just rebuilding, is 4-4. And if they get a win over a solid Eastside team, you're saying 5-4. And is it out of the realm of possibility that they get hot at the right time and at least get into the sectional championship game? I mean, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. So I think it's a pivotal game both for Angola and Eastside.
Yeah, and for Angola, those guys know how to win in the postseason. They've seen it. They've seen their, season end against Bishop Dwenger. They've won big sectional games on the road. Ask Culver about it.
Right, right.
So they know how to win in the postseason. So it could be a flip the switch mid-season thing going on for Andy Thomas and the Hornets. Meanwhile, Churubusco, they drew Southwood in the first round of the playoffs. Southwood is going to go to Busco. But I think that's probably going to be our highlight zone game of the week. Yeah. How does Busco get ready for that? They've got a Fairfield team this week that, on paper, last year they won 0 games. This year they've already won 4.
Yeah, right. At Fairfield, you look at Fremont that was been halfway decent this year. I think it's a test for Cherubusco. Jake Folk got back on the right track last week, but they lost at home against West Noble. So I think it's that running game. And also how they can contain the running attack. I think they gave Brandon Pruitt was able to find 1 too many holes and run over 1 too many dudes last Friday. Yeah. They need to figure out how to slow that down because Southwood is going to come in. The last couple of years were like, okay, that 1 year where they threw for a butt ton of yards, right? Then they rushed for a butt ton of yards. I think it just seems like that rushing attack once again for Southwood, who's undefeated right now. Which Southwood team are you going to get? It's a difficult challenge for Cherubusco.
The year of Carson Blair, then the year of Gabe Lloyd, and now it's a little Alex Farr and everything.
And I think we're already kind of looking forward to maybe in that sectional that Southwood Adams Central game, that play for the 4th straight year. In 16 they played in the regional. Last 2 years they played in the sectional. So we've kind of already fast forwarded to that matchup potential in the final. But Southwood has to go to Turtletown. Could be a tough test for them.
We've talked a lot about the postseason. I know Andy will be in for me Monday. We got a wedding in
Missouri.
Hey,
how about you?
The girls are flower girls, so we've got to be there early.
Yeah.
But when you take a look at the postseason, a lot of people, when they saw this draw, there aren't that many premier matchups in the first round. There are teams that have to ask South Adams. They got to travel an hour and a half for a first-round sectional game. What are your thoughts on seeding? Because other states do it. It seems to be a positive, but not all other states have every team qualify for the postseason. So when people say, let's do seeding, there are a lot more moving parts, I think, than people give it credit for. And they give that blanket statement of we need seeding. What's your take on that?
I'm not entirely against seeding. I don't like the fact that it dominates the conversation all the time because is it really that big of a deal in the end? Every team's playing on Friday night anyway. I think it's worse in basketball when you have the top 2 teams draw to play a 6 o'clock game an hour away on a Tuesday. That's a problem, I think, for attendance. But in football, everybody plays on Friday. You know, the attendance is going to be negatively affected whether you play, the championship game week 1 or week 3 in terms of the two best teams. And then how do you seed them? Do you go by Sagarin ratings? Do you go by overall record? Do you go by, point differential? I mean, what do you do? There's no perfect solution regardless of how you do it. I just think it's something that people like to gripe about all the time, and there's no perfect solution. And I don't feel like it's really going to solve much of anything in football. I'd much rather like to see it in basketball.
What are you most looking forward to about this week? Because like we said, a lot of these games aren't great on paper, but they are good contests or have their own benefits to get teams ready for the postseason, especially teams that think they can make not only a run at a sectional title, but maybe more.
I think it's which teams are peaking at the right time. Every coach says they want their team to be playing the best football in Week 10, and I think this Friday will be a good indication on who is doing that or who at least is close to that. Getting a win, you look at Leo DeKalb, who's able to get a win. Northside Concordia, I think, is a game that a lot of people have circled in the last couple weeks with how Northside has played. So Angola Eastside as well. I think those games are really going to be key in terms of those teams trying to find some traction, some momentum heading into the sectional.
All right, and we'll have it all covered on the Highlight Zone this coming Friday night and then again on Monday with Justin here on Inside the Zone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.